We're studying the book of Acts, and now in week 2, we're learning about the deacon program. What happened was there were 12 apostles, and they were supposed to be preaching and evangelizing and doing all this highbrow stuff. But they were involved instead, they were getting bogged down by nitty gritty administration within their community of making sure that the right people got the right amount of food and aid and all that kind of stuff. And so they decided that in order for them to do the more, let's say, important work, that they would delegate certain administrative responsibilities to the 7 deacons. And so we learn about Philip and Stephen and some of these other folks to take care of some of this important administrative work so that the apostles could focus on other work. A number of years ago, I was in a church that started a deacon program. The pastor thought it would be good to have these other people who would be developing relationships within the congregation, and that would not only free him up to do other things, but also so that parishioners would have other relationships, other conduits into the church other than just the pastor. And that would be helpful not only to keep the pastor from being a bottleneck, but also because not every parishioner might feel comfortable bringing up every issue. And so we were supposed to, I was one of these so-called deacons, and we were supposed to, call on our set of people and develop these relationships and so on. Now, honestly, in most cases, that was not very gratifying. As with the St. Mary's Connection team right now, there might be problems that you try calling somebody up. Email wasn't such a big thing in those days, but you call them up, they never return your calls. You don't really have the rapport with certain people and so on. And so a lot of times the work would feel frustrating for one of these deacons. You just weren't connecting. For me, there were 2 cases in particular that really ended up feeling impactful. One of them was Alice. She was an older woman. I had no idea who she was. She never showed up to church. Her son, who was already, pretty elderly guy, would show up to church. I had no idea who he, really who he was. But it turned out Alice fell and was convalescing right around the corner from my home. I worked from home. So I got in the habit of visiting her at midday. I would take a break. I would walk around the corner. I would visit her. She had some dementia. So every time I would visit, she was happy to see me, but couldn't remember my name. It turns out, even though I didn't really know her, there were she had been very important in the church well before I had become part of the congregation. And so there were all of these little old ladies who knew Alice very well and liked her, and they might go visit her. And they heard that there was this guy who would be visiting her every day, but Alice simply could not remember this guy's name, my name. These little old ladies finally figured out. What happened was I noticed that all of a sudden all of these ladies were just kind of very nice to me. And so I think what had happened was they figured out I was the guy who was visiting Alice. And they were very appreciative of that. Another one of my charges was a guy named Lew. I did not connect very much with Lew, but at some point he ended up on his deathbed with cancer. And so I would visit him pretty regularly. And when his estate was resolved, it turned out his executor told me that I had choice of any of the furniture that Lew left behind, because it turned out that I was actually very important to Lew, and I just never knew that. So it was an impactful experience to me to become a part of 2 people's lives, even if most of the people that I was supposed to be in charge of, never really returned my phone calls. Anyhow, when I think about deacons, that's what I think about.